Spells and showers, a high of 13 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. In Wilston, the high road stays closed in both directions for an ongoing police investigation, and as a result it is very busy in the area. Also, delays continue in Camberwell on Camberwell Church Street, and that's because of the temporary traffic lights. In Kew, the traffic lights aren't working at the junction with Kew Road and Spring Grove, and as a result there are queues on all approaches. Very busy in Greenford on the A40 eastbound, that's because of the emergency repair works, and in Dagenham, Maplestead Road is closed in both directions, also after an investigation.
This is LBC.
From moving home
Ferrari now 0345 6060 973 LBC.
This is Network.
Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 minutes before 8, a landmark day in the troubling battle against domestic abuse. A bill that passes both Houses of Parliament has been signed into law. And here are the details of exactly what it will provide for is Conservative MP and Safeguarding Minister Victoria Atkins, who joins me now. Good morning, Minister. What has this bill provided? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick, and thank you. This bill will help the 2.3 million adult victims and their children who live with domestic abuse, and it will help to protect victims, but also importantly to stop perpetrators. So we have, for example, a definition, a really wide-ranging definition that makes it clear that domestic abuse is not restricted to physical violence, that it can take many other forms, including emotional and even economic abuse. It also deals with very practical measures to protect victims in the family courts, because we know that abusers sadly try to use the family courts as a way of continuing the abuse. And there are a range of other measures. We've got a revolutionary duty on local councils to provide specialist services for people in refuge and safe accommodation to help them recover from their experiences. And we have the establishment of the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, whose focus will be on holding national and local government to account on all of the services that we are providing. So it's a huge piece of legislation. I haven't done it justice, but I'm very conscious that the hard work starts now, because we've got to implement this act and really get to the people that we're trying to help.
So what does it provide for now, Minister, that we didn't have in the past?
Well, for example, we are stopping the use of, for example, cross-examination by the perpetrator in family courts. That can be an incredibly terrorising experience for victims of domestic abuse to have to confront their perpetrator in court. We have this provision of specialist services in refuges. This will mean that we're very much ensuring that there's consistency of service across the country if people have to flee their homes for their own safety. But we also want to try to help victims much earlier in the system. So through the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, she will be holding us to account, but also importantly drawing up reports, recommendations for local councils to implement in terms of local delivery. And we also have taken we've really put some markers in the sand, if you like, on the sorts of behaviours that we don't believe to be healthy in sexual relationships, and that we want to help victims. So there has been some compelling evidence from clinicians working in sexual assault referral centres about the use of non-fatal strangulation, and we know that this is sadly a very common event now in domestically abusive relationships, and so we have prohibited that. But we've prohibited it not just in the context of, if you like, established relationships.
Right.
Apply to people who've met on a first date. We've clarified the law on the so-called rough sex defence, because there have been horrific cases where women have been put through extraordinary traumas, and the perpetrators have been able to claim that this was somehow consensual. And also we are prohibiting the threats to use revenge porn. This is a particular problem, I think, for younger women, because pictures are being taken, or they may even be taking themselves, perhaps being coerced into doing so, and then the perpetrator is threatening to use those, to disclose those images to others, and that can have an absolutely devastating impact on the victim at the centre of it. So this bill delivers on that, as well as the very focused domestic abuse measures.
A related question in part, was BAFTA right to honour Noel Clarke if they were aware of the sexual harassment allegations which the filmmaker denies?
Well, I'm in the invidious position as a minister of not being able to comment on individual cases, but I would hope that as a general principle, I would hope that any organisation looks very, very carefully at the conduct and the behaviours of people within either its employment or outside when making the sorts of decisions that you are describing that are so reputational for that organisation.
Okay.
Indeed, we are working with employers to help them help victims of domestic abuse within their workforce, because we know that can be a really vital way of reaching victims of domestic abuse.
Let me take you on to safer territory, Minister. For me, it was a new pedal bin in my kitchen, and it cost about £150. What was the last thing you bought from John Lewis?
Oh my! I love John Lewis. It will have been. I was in there last week. Makeup actually. It was makeup.
You buy makeup? Well, I'm very appreciative. Do you?
I better not advertise it. But yeah.
What did you think of Sir Keir Starmer doing that stunt with a roll of wallpaper in the Manchester branch yesterday, Minister?
Well, didn't it sum it all up? I mean, the leader of the opposition is there, as you say, performing a stunt with wallpaper charts, whilst the Prime Minister is visiting. He was visiting a school yesterday to listen to the students about their experiences through the pandemic, but also to talk about how we can raise educational attainment. I think that absolutely sets out the priorities of our separate parties in the run-up, of course, to some really important elections.
Right.
Thursday, both locally and in the by-election in Hartlepool.
You mentioned the Prime Minister. Do you have his new mobile phone number?
Right. I, as a minister of his government, I have all sorts of ways of contacting with, as you would expect, and I'm afraid I can't help you with the Prime Minister's
No, I wouldn't ask for it on air, but I'm just wondering whether you're in possession of it. I wouldn't ask you to give it to me, I assure you, Minister, but are you in possession of it?
I have a number, and I have different ways of...
Now, lastly, I don't know whether you saw the Evening Standard in London yesterday, Tom Newton-Dunn writing that unfortunately you seem to have fallen out with Carrie Symonds because of some disparaging remark. I'm sure you're aware of that. Lastly, Minister, let's clear the air. What did you say, or alternatively, is it all peace and harmony between the two of you?
It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense in a week that has had more than its fair share of nonsense news. I cannot quite believe that was published, but I'm very happy to say on the record it's absolute nonsense.
And you enjoy a harmonious relationship with the Prime Minister's fiancée?
I don't know her very well, but what I do know is we've got several friends in common. She is a great friend to them, and very kind, very supportive, and sounds to be great fun. So,
and there was no disparaging remark. Just to nail that completely, Minister.
Sorry?
There was no disparaging remark. Just
Absolutely
to nail.
not.
No.
It's completely utter nonsense. And what is frustrating is that this week I have been concentrating on trying to get this piece of legislation through the domestic abuse bill, which will help, as we've already heard, millions of people across the country. And that is work that I know Carrie is very, very supportive of. And that's what we've been focusing on. So it gives people perhaps an insight into some of the nonsense headlines we've had this week.
Congratulations to you and your colleagues in getting that bill through, and thank you very much for your time. Safeguarding Minister, Conservative MP Victoria Atkins appearing here on LBC. Let's get 30 seconds. Last comment on that wallpaper stunt. Patrick in Battersea, all yours, sir. Was it a good one? Did it land a blow, or did he miss the target?
I don't care whether he missed the target. What I care about is whether or not my Prime Minister and his cabinet are corrupt. That's what I care about. Who paid for it? Why did they pay for it? And what are they getting for paying for it in return? That's what I want to know. We've got too many scandals with this government giving stuff to their mates who do them favours and